Hello and welcome. Tonight, we're going to explore what might be humanity's oldest and deepest mystery: consciousness. Right now, you're reading or listening to these words. Your eyes are moving, your mind is making sense of meaning, and somehow, you exist. A being that thinks, feels, experiences. But what exactly is that experience? What is this strange inner theater where thoughts flicker like candles, where memories drift like clouds, where you watch your own life unfold from somewhere deep inside your skull? You've probably never questioned it too much. Consciousness is just there, like breathing or the beating of your heart. It feels as natural as the morning sun streaming through your window. But here's the curious part. No one really knows what it is. Scientists can map every neuron in your brain. They can watch electrical signals dance across your cortex. They can predict what you'll do before you're even aware of deciding. But they still can't explain why any of this feels like something. Why there's a you experiencing it all. It's what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness. Not how the brain works, we're getting better at that. But why it feels like anything to be you. Think about it for a moment. Close your eyes just briefly. Notice the darkness behind your eyelids. Notice the sound of your own breath. Feel the weight of your body wherever you're sitting or lying. That's consciousness. That simple, that profound, and that utterly mysterious. Some say consciousness is just an illusion, a trick the brain plays on itself. Others believe it's the most fundamental thing in the universe, perhaps even more basic than matter or energy. And still others wonder if it might be something we'll never fully understand, like a fish trying to comprehend the ocean while swimming through it. Tonight, we're going to take a gentle journey through the landscape of consciousness. We'll explore what happens in your brain when you're aware, what neuroscience has discovered about the mechanics of thought, and why some questions remain beautifully, stubbornly unanswered. I hope this voyage is soothing enough to carry you towards sleep, but interesting enough to make the journey worthwhile. And if you find yourself still awake at the end, well, at least you'll have learned something extraordinary about the most intimate thing you possess: your own awareness. So settle in, let your shoulders drop, take a slow breath, and let's begin this quiet exploration into the mystery that is you. Before we dive deeper, I'd love to know, where in the world are you right now? What time is it there? Are you in bed, on a couch, perhaps traveling somewhere? Drop a comment below. It's a small reminder that consciousness exists everywhere, in every time zone, in countless forms, all experiencing this moment in their own unique way. And if you enjoy these slow, thoughtful explorations of science and wonder, I'd be grateful if you subscribed, or left a like, or simply shared this with someone who might need a peaceful moment tonight. Now then, let's ask the first question. What is consciousness? It sounds simple, but the moment you try to define it, it slips through your fingers like water. Is it awareness? Yes, but awareness of what? The world around you? Your own thoughts? The fact that you're aware of being aware? Is it the voice in your head? That constant narrator commenting on everything you do? Not quite. You can be conscious without words. Animals are conscious. Babies are conscious long before they learn language. And sometimes, in moments of deep focus or meditation, that inner voice goes quiet, but you're still here. Is it memory, emotion, attention? All of these things seem tied to consciousness, but none of them quite capture the essence of it. Perhaps the simplest way to describe consciousness is this: it's what disappears when you fall into deep, dreamless sleep, and returns when you wake up. It's the difference between experiencing and not experiencing, between being and nothing. But even that feels incomplete. Because consciousness isn't just an on-off switch. It has layers, textures, depths. You can be barely conscious, stumbling through the morning in a fog. You can be hyper-conscious, alert to every detail. You can be lost in thought, aware of your inner world, but oblivious to the outer one. Or you can be fully present, awake to everything at once. Consciousness is a spectrum, a landscape, and somewhere in that landscape right now is you. The ancient philosophers puzzled over this. Descartes famously declared, "I think, therefore I am," suggesting that consciousness, that thinking awareness, was the one thing he could be certain of. Everything else could be doubted, even the existence of the physical world. But the fact that he was doubting, that required a conscious mind. It was proof of existence itself. The Eastern traditions took a different approach. In Buddhism, consciousness isn't a thing you have, it's a process, a flow. It arises and passes away moment by moment, like a river that looks continuous but is actually made of countless individual drops of water. In Hinduism, consciousness isn't limited to individuals. It's universal, infinite. You and I and the stars and the stones are all expressions of one cosmic awareness, experiencing itself in different forms. These aren't just poetic ideas. Modern neuroscience is beginning to uncover hints that consciousness might indeed be more distributed, more interconnected than we ever imagined. But before we get to the science, let's just sit with the mystery for a moment longer. You are conscious. I am conscious. But we'll never truly know what it's like to be each other. I can describe my experience to you. I can tell you about the color blue I see, the taste of coffee I enjoy, the feeling of sadness that washes over me, but you'll only ever know your version of blue, your taste of coffee, your sadness. This is what philosophers call the subjective nature of consciousness. It's private, personal, utterly unique to each experiencer. And that's what makes it so hard to study. Science is built on objectivity, on things we can measure and agree upon, but consciousness is the most subjective thing there is. So how do we even begin to understand it? We start, as always, with the brain. Your brain is a remarkable thing, about 3 pounds of soft tissue, wrinkled like a walnut, floating in fluid inside your skull. It contains roughly 86 billion neurons, nerve cells that communicate through electrical and chemical signals. Each neuron can connect to thousands of others, forming a vast network of unimaginable complexity. This network is constantly active, buzzing with information. Signals race along neural pathways at speeds up to 120 meters per second. Chemicals called neurotransmitters flood across tiny gaps between neurons, triggering cascades of activity that ripple through your cortex like waves across a pond. And somehow, in all this electrochemical chaos you emerge, a sense of self, a point of view, an inner life. But where exactly does consciousness live in the brain? Is there a specific region, a consciousness center where the magic happens? For a long time, scientists thought there might be. They looked for the seat of consciousness, some command center deep in the brain where all the information came together and awareness was born. They never found it. Instead, what they discovered is that consciousness seems to be distributed across many regions of the brain, all working in harmony. It's not in one place. It's in the connections, the patterns, the dance of neural networks communicating with each other. Think of it like an orchestra. No single instrument creates the music. The violin doesn't contain the symphony, but when all the instruments play together, following the same rhythm, something greater emerges. The music. Your consciousness is that music, not in the neurons themselves, but in how they work together. Let's take a gentle walk through your brain and see which regions contribute to this symphony of awareness. At the very back of your brain, tucked away in the occipital lobe, is your visual cortex. This is where the raw data from your eyes gets processed. Shapes, colors, movement, all translated from light into meaning. But you don't experience vision in the occipital lobe. You experience it, well, out there, in the world. You see the tree in front of you, not the neural activity in the back of your head. That's because your visual cortex is connected to countless other regions. The temporal lobes help you recognize what you're seeing. The parietal lobes help you understand where it is in space. The frontal lobes help you decide what to do about it. And somewhere in all those connections, vision becomes conscious. You don't just process light, you see. The same is true for all your senses. Touch, sound, taste, smell, each has dedicated processing areas in the brain. But conscious experience of these senses requires those areas to communicate with each other, to integrate their information into a unified experience. This integration seems to be crucial for consciousness. There's a structure deep in your brain called the thalamus. It's a small egg-shaped bundle of neurons that acts like a relay station, passing information between different brain regions. Some scientists believe the thalamus plays a key role in consciousness by coordinating activity across the cortex. When the thalamus is damaged, people can fall into a vegetative state, awake but not aware. Their eyes might open, their bodies might move reflexively, but there's no one home. The lights are on, but consciousness has left the building. Then there's the prefrontal cortex right behind your forehead. This is often called the executive region of the brain. It's involved in planning, decision-making, self-control. It's what makes you feel like you're in charge, like you're steering the ship of your own mind. Damage to the prefrontal cortex doesn't eliminate consciousness, but it can change personality, reduce self-awareness, make someone impulsive or emotionally flat. It's as if part of the orchestra has stopped playing, and the music changes character. Deeper still, there's a network of structures called the brainstem. This ancient part of the brain controls basic functions like breathing, heart rate, arousal. It's what keeps you alive even when you're not thinking about it. And it seems to play a role in consciousness too, specifically in regulating whether you're awake or asleep, alert or drowsy. It's like the brain's dimmer switch, turning consciousness up or down. But here's where things get truly fascinating. Even with all this mapping, even knowing which brain regions light up when you're conscious, scientists still can't explain the most important part, the feeling of it. This is what philosopher David Chalmers called the hard problem of consciousness. The easy problems, if we can call them that, are the ones science is solving. How does the brain process information? How do neurons fire? How does sensory data get integrated? But the hard problem is, why does any of this feel like something? Why doesn't the brain just process information in the dark, like a computer? Why is there an inner experience? Why is there a you? Some scientists think we're asking the wrong question. They argue that consciousness isn't some magical extra ingredient, it's just what complex information processing feels like from the inside. When a system reaches a certain level of complexity and integration, consciousness emerges naturally. It's an elegant idea, but it doesn't quite satisfy the mystery, does it? Because it still doesn't explain why there's an inside at all. Others suggest consciousness might be fundamental to the universe, like space or time or energy. Maybe it's not produced by the brain. Maybe the brain is more like a radio, tuning into consciousness that's already out there, filtering it into the specific experience of being you. This idea, called panpsychism, sounds mystical, but some serious scientists and philosophers take it seriously. If consciousness is fundamental, they argue, it solves the hard problem. You don't have to explain how dead matter becomes aware, because at some level, everything has a tiny spark of awareness. A rock might have only the faintest glimmer of proto-consciousness, a tree a bit more, an insect more still, and a human brain, with its billions of neurons and trillions of connections, experiences consciousness in its fullest, richest form. It's a beautiful thought, though admittedly difficult to test. Then there are those who think consciousness is an illusion. Not that you don't experience things. Obviously you do, but that the sense of a unified self, a little person inside your head, watching it all, that part is a trick. According to this view, consciousness is more like a user interface. Your brain creates a simplified model of reality, and a simplified model of you to help you navigate the world. But neither model is the truth. They're useful fictions. It's like the icons on your computer desktop. You see a little trash can, a folder, a document, but inside the computer, there's no actual trash can. There's just electrical signals, ones and zeros. The interface is a convenient representation, not reality. Maybe your sense of self is the same, a convenient story your brain tells but not a real singular thing. This idea is both humbling and a little unnerving, but in a strange way, it's also freeing. If the self is a construct, then maybe it's more flexible than we think. Maybe we're not trapped in one fixed identity. Maybe we're a process constantly being remade, moment by moment. Let's take a breath here. We've wandered into some deep philosophical territory, and you might be feeling a bit lost, or perhaps wonderfully adrift. That's okay. These are questions humanity has been asking for thousands of years, and we're no closer to definitive answers. But what we do have is a growing understanding of how consciousness works, even if we don't fully understand what it is. So let's turn our attention to some of the discoveries neuroscience has made, the clues we've gathered about the architecture of awareness. One of the most important discoveries is this: much of what your brain does happens outside of consciousness. Right now, your brain is regulating your heartbeat, digesting your last meal, adjusting your posture, filtering out background noise, and doing 1,000 other things you're completely unaware of. Even your thoughts aren't as conscious as they seem. Studies have shown that the brain begins preparing to make a decision several seconds before you become consciously aware of making it. In other words, your unconscious brain knows what you're going to do before your conscious mind does. This unsettling finding comes from experiments where people were asked to make a simple choice, like pressing a button with their left or right hand whenever they felt like it. Meanwhile, their brain activity was being monitored with an EEG or fMRI. Researchers found they could predict which hand the person would choose up to 10 seconds before the person consciously decided. The neural patterns gave it away. So, who's really in control? If your brain makes decisions before you're aware of them, what does that say about free will? It's a troubling question, and one we'll return to. But for now, it tells us something important. Consciousness is just the tip of the iceberg. Beneath it lies a vast hidden ocean of unconscious processing. Your brain is constantly taking in information, running simulations, weighing options, all without bothering to inform your conscious mind. Only the most important, most relevant information bubbles up into awareness. Think of consciousness as a spotlight. It can only shine on a small area at a time. Everything outside that spotlight still exists, still influences you, but you're not aware of it in the moment. This is why you can drive a familiar route and suddenly realize you don't remember the last 10 minutes. Your unconscious brain was handling the driving, following the road, avoiding obstacles, while your conscious mind wandered off thinking about lunch. It's also why you can sometimes solve problems by not thinking about them. You've probably experienced this. You struggle with a puzzle, give up, go for a walk, and suddenly the answer appears. That's your unconscious brain quietly working in the background, making connections your conscious mind couldn't see. So if so much happens unconsciously, what's the point of consciousness at all? Good question. One theory is that consciousness exists for integration. Your brain receives input from dozens of different systems: vision, hearing, touch, memory, emotion, language, planning. Consciousness might be what binds all that information together into a single coherent experience. Without consciousness, you'd just be a collection of separate processes reacting to stimuli without any unified perspective. You wouldn't have a story of your life. You wouldn't have a sense of past, present, and future. You'd be like a thermostat, responding to the environment, but never really experiencing it. Consciousness gives you continuity. It creates the narrative of you. Another theory is that consciousness allows for flexibility. Unconscious processes are fast and efficient, but they're also rigid. They follow patterns, habits, instincts. Consciousness, on the other hand, is slow and effortful, but it can do something unconscious processes can't. It can imagine alternatives. When you're conscious of a problem, you can think about it in new ways. You can consider hypothetical scenarios. You can override your instincts and choose a different path. Consciousness, in this view, is what makes you adaptable, creative, capable of learning and growth. A third idea is that consciousness evolved for social reasons. Being aware of your own thoughts and feelings helps you predict what others might be thinking and feeling. It's the foundation of empathy, communication, cooperation. If you can imagine what it's like to be someone else, you can work together more effectively. You can build societies, cultures, civilizations. Consciousness might be what made us human. Of course, these theories aren't mutually exclusive. Consciousness probably serves many functions, and it probably evolved gradually, layer by layer, over millions of years. Which brings us to an interesting question. Are animals conscious? The short answer is probably, but it depends on the animal. Most neuroscientists agree that mammals are conscious. Dogs, cats, dolphins, elephants, primates, they all have complex brains, show signs of self-awareness, experience emotions, solve problems, form social bonds. Your dog probably isn't contemplating the meaning of existence, but there's definitely something it's like to be a dog. A flow of sensations, feelings, desires, an inner life, even if simpler than yours. Birds too seem to be conscious. Crows can recognize human faces, use tools, even hold grudges. Parrots can learn language, make jokes, show affection. Their brains are structured differently from mammalian brains, but they achieve similar levels of intelligence and awareness. Then it gets murkier. Are fish conscious? Probably, though their consciousness is likely quite different from ours. They respond to pain, learn from experience, navigate complex environments. That suggests some level of inner experience. Insects, that's harder to say. A bee's brain has less than 1 million neurons, compared to your 86 billion. But bees can learn, remember, communicate with other bees through dance. Is there something it's like to be a bee? Maybe. Or maybe they're more like biological robots, responding to stimuli without any inner light of awareness. And what about plants? Or bacteria? Or AI? These questions get philosophical quickly. If consciousness is a spectrum, where do we draw the line? Is there a minimum threshold of complexity before awareness kicks in? Or is it a matter of kind, not degree? Some researchers suggest we should think about different dimensions of consciousness. There's the level of consciousness, how awake and alert you are, and there's the content of consciousness, what you're experiencing. A mouse might have a lower level, but still rich content. A person in a vegetative state might have some level but little content. Then there's self-consciousness, the ability to be aware that you're aware, to recognize yourself in a mirror, to think about your own thoughts. This seems to be rarer. Humans have it. Great apes have it. Dolphins and elephants probably do. But most animals likely don't. And finally, there's metacognition, the ability to reflect on your own knowledge and ignorance, to know what you know and what you don't. This is an even higher level, and might be unique to humans, or at least very rare in other species. Understanding these dimensions helps us appreciate that consciousness isn't one thing. It's a collection of abilities, and different creatures have different combinations. But regardless of where we draw the lines, one thing seems clear. Consciousness is widespread in the animal kingdom. It's not a uniquely human gift. It's an ancient feature of complex nervous systems, fine-tuned by evolution across millions of years. And that tells us something important. Consciousness is biological. It arises from the physical processes of brains, which means in principle we should be able to understand it. Someday. But we're not there yet. Let's talk about some of the mysteries that remain. The edges of consciousness where science meets philosophy and both shrug their shoulders in wonder. First, there's the question of qualia. That's the philosophical term for the subjective felt qualities of experience, the redness of red, the painfulness of pain, the particular way coffee tastes on your tongue. You can describe these sensations to others, but you can never truly share them. Your red might be different from my red. We'd never know. We've both learned to call a certain wavelength of light red, but the actual experience, the quale, is locked inside each of our minds. This is sometimes called the explanatory gap. Even if we perfectly understand the neural correlates of seeing red, the specific pattern of neurons that fire when you look at a rose, we still can't explain why that pattern feels like anything. It's the difference between knowing how a piano works, understanding the mechanics of hammers striking strings, and actually hearing music. The how doesn't capture the what it's like. Some philosophers think this gap can never be closed, that no amount of neuroscience will ever explain qualia, because subjective experience is fundamentally different from objective processes. Others are more optimistic, believing it's just a matter of time and better theories. Then there's the binding problem. Your conscious experience feels unified. You see a red ball, and the color, shape, and motion all appear together as one object. But in your brain, color is processed in one area, shape in another, motion in yet another. So how do they get bound together into a single coherent perception? No one knows. There are theories. Some suggest that neurons firing in sync, oscillating at the same frequency, might be the mechanism that binds features together. Others point to feedback loops between brain regions, or the role of attention in selecting and combining information. But there's no consensus. The binding problem remains unsolved. Another mystery. The sense of self. You feel like there's a continuous you persisting through time. The person who went to bed last night is the same person who woke up this morning. But is that really true? Your cells are constantly dying and being replaced. Your neurons are rewiring themselves based on experience. Your memories are being edited and reconsolidated. In a very real sense, you're not the same person you were 10 years ago, or even yesterday. And yet you feel like you. There's a continuity, a thread of identity that seems to run through your entire life. Where does that come from? Some say it's memory. You remember being younger. You remember your past decisions, relationships, experiences. That creates a narrative, a story of self that feels continuous even though it's constantly being updated. Others say it's more about the body. Your physical form provides a stable anchor for identity. As long as you're in the same body, you feel like the same person. But then there are cases that challenge this. People with amnesia lose their memories but still feel like themselves. People who undergo dramatic physical changes, illness, injury, aging, still maintain a sense of identity. So maybe the self isn't memory or body. Maybe it's something more abstract. A pattern, a process, a story the brain tells itself to make sense of the chaos. Or maybe, as some Buddhist teachings suggest, the self is an illusion. There is no permanent, unchanging you. There's just a flow of experiences, thoughts, and sensations, and the mind creates the illusion of a self to unify them. It's a radical idea, but not without merit. When you look closely at your own experience, when you meditate and observe your thoughts, you start to notice that the self is slippery. It's hard to pin down. Thoughts arise on their own. Feelings come and go. Where's the you in all of that? Maybe you're not a thing. Maybe you're a verb. Not a noun, but a process. Not being, but becoming. These are not questions science can easily answer, because they're not just about mechanics. They're about meaning, about what it means to be a person, to have a life, to experience existence. And that brings us to one of the most profound questions of all. Can consciousness exist without a brain? The materialist view says no. Consciousness is entirely the product of physical processes in the brain. When the brain dies, consciousness ends. There's no ghost, no soul, no afterlife, just the lights going out. It's a sobering thought, but also, in its way, comforting. It means consciousness is natural, explainable, part of the physical universe. It demystifies the mind and places it firmly within the realm of science. But not everyone agrees. Dualists, following in the tradition of Descartes, believe that mind and matter are separate. Consciousness might depend on the brain while we're alive, but it's not identical to it. Perhaps consciousness is something non-physical that interacts with the physical brain, like software running on hardware. This raises its own problems. How does a non-physical mind influence a physical brain? What's the mechanism? Dualism struggles to answer this without invoking something mysterious or magical. Then there are those who take the panpsychist view we mentioned earlier. If consciousness is a fundamental feature of the universe, then it doesn't require a brain. Brains just organize and amplify consciousness into the complex form we experience. In this view, consciousness is everywhere, in everything, to varying degrees. The universe itself might be conscious, in some vast, incomprehensible way. It's a poetic idea, and surprisingly, not entirely dismissed by modern physics. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics hint at the role of consciousness in collapsing wave functions, in turning possibilities into actualities. Perhaps the observer, the conscious mind, plays a fundamental role in reality itself. But these are speculations, at the edge of knowledge. Beautiful, tantalizing, but unproven. What we can say with confidence is this: consciousness, whatever it is, remains one of the great mysteries of existence. We've learned a tremendous amount about the brain, about neurons and networks and neurochemicals. We've mapped the regions involved in awareness, attention, perception, thought. But the central question remains unanswered. What is it like to be? Why is there an inner world? Why does it feel like something to be you? Maybe one day we'll solve it. Maybe we'll build a complete theory of consciousness that explains every aspect, from the firing of neurons to the sensation of tasting chocolate. Maybe we'll even create artificial consciousness, proving that awareness can be engineered. Or maybe consciousness will remain forever mysterious, not because we're not smart enough, but because some things can't be fully understood from the outside. You can't step out of consciousness to examine it objectively. You're always inside it, looking out. And perhaps that's okay. Perhaps the mystery is part of the beauty. Because consciousness isn't just a scientific problem. It's your life. It's every moment you've ever experienced. Every joy. Every sorrow. Every quiet morning. And restless night. It's the fact that you're here now, reading these words, aware of being aware. That's not nothing. That's everything. So as we come to the end of this journey, let's return to where we began. The simple, profound fact of your existence. You are conscious. You experience the world. You have thoughts, feelings, dreams. You have a point of view, a perspective, an inner life that no one else can ever fully access. And for all the science we've explored, for all the theories and speculations, that basic fact remains astonishing. Somewhere in the 3 pounds of tissue inside your skull, in the dance of 86 billion neurons, in the flow of electricity and chemistry, you emerge. Not just a body, Not just a brain, but a mind, a self, a consciousness. It's the most ordinary thing in the world. Everyone experiences it, and yet it's the most extraordinary mystery we've ever encountered. So take a moment right now to simply notice. Notice the quality of your awareness, the sounds around you, the feeling of your breath, the thoughts drifting through your mind like clouds across a sky. This is consciousness. This is you. And however it works, whatever it is, it's a gift. A brief window of awareness in a vast, mostly unconscious universe. You're here. You're awake. You're experiencing this moment. And that in the end is the real mystery. Not why or how, but simply that it is. So rest easy tonight, knowing that whatever consciousness is, you are it. You're the universe becoming aware of itself, asking questions about itself, wondering at its own existence. Sleep well, conscious being. Dream deeply. And when you wake tomorrow, you'll do it all over again. The mystery continuing, moment by moment in the endless beautiful unfolding of awareness. Thank you for being here. Thank you for wondering with me. And thank you for the simple miraculous fact of your consciousness. Good night.